me ask you something powerful right now. Have you ever felt that quiet certainty that someone, somewhere, is thinking about you without them saying a word? Human behavior leaves clues. And when you learn to read those clues, you stop guessing, you stop doubting, and you start choosing from a place of strength instead of uncertainty. When a man thinks about you all day, it first reveals itself through the quality of his communication, not the quantity. This is where most people get confused. They count messages, they track response times, they analyze emojis, but real intention lives deeper than that. Purposeful communication means he reaches out with clarity, direction, and presence. His words are not random, they are anchored. He doesn't just talk to fill silence, he communicates to connect. Psychology teaches us that the mind naturally revisits what it considers meaningful. So when someone consistently initiates thoughtful contact, it means you are occupying mental space even when you are not physically present. You will notice that his communication carries continuity. He remembers where the last conversation ended and builds on it. That tells you something powerful. You're not a moment to him, you're a narrative. The brain only maintains ongoing stories for things it values. When he follows up on your goals, checks in on something you mentioned days ago, or references shared experiences, it's evidence that his attention doesn't reset when the conversation ends. It continues throughout his day. Purposeful communication also shows emotional investment. He listens to understand, not just to respond. He asks questions that go beyond surface-level curiosity because he wants to know how you think, how you feel, and how you grow. This is important because emotional presence requires mental energy. A distracted mind cannot offer depth. If he communicates with focus, empathy, and consistency, it means his thoughts return to you naturally. There's another layer here that empowers you. Consistent communication doesn't mean constant availability. In fact, someone who thinks about you all day may not message you all day, but when he does, it's intentional. He respects his responsibilities and still makes space for connection. That balance reflects maturity and genuine interest, not emotional dependency. Understanding this shifts your mindset. You stop chasing reassurance and start observing alignment. You stop interpreting mixed signals and start trusting patterns. Because intention always leaves fingerprints. And when communication is steady, thoughtful, and aligned with action, it tells you that you matter without needing to be convinced. This awareness isn't about romantic fantasy, it's about self-respect. When you recognize purposeful communication, you learn to choose people who choose you back with clarity. And when you operate from that clarity, you elevate your standards, your confidence, and ultimately, your emotional power. Let's go deeper into the first truth. Consistent, purposeful communication reveals mental priority. When a man thinks about you all day, communication stops being random and starts becoming intentional. He doesn't just talk when it's convenient, he reaches out because his mind naturally moves in your direction. This isn't about constant texting or dramatic gestures. It's about presence. You'll notice he checks in without a reason, shares moments of his day, and circles back to conversations instead of letting them fade. Education teaches us that the brain repeats what feels meaningful. When communication has rhythm, warmth, and continuity, it's a reflection of inner focus. A man who thinks about you all day doesn't disappear for long stretches and return with excuses. His connection with you feels like part of his daily routine. And here's the empowering part for you. You don't need to demand attention or decode mixed signals. Purposeful communication creates emotional safety. It tells you where you stand without forcing you to ask. When you recognize this pattern, you stop wasting energy on uncertainty and start honoring connections that feel grounded, steady, and real. Now, let's expand the deeper layer. Time investment reflects internal commitment. Time is not just hours on a clock. It is energy, intention, and priority combined. When a man thinks about you all day, he finds ways to include you in his life, even when life is busy. He plans ahead. He adjusts. He shows up. Not because he's perfect, but because you matter. Neuroscience tells us that what we value, we protect with time. You'll see it in small sacrifices, calling when tired, listening when distracted, making space when it would be easier not to. This is not obsession. This is alignment. And this is where your power lives. When you understand that real interest shows up through time, you stop being impressed by words alone. You begin to measure connection by consistency. This awareness elevates your standards without hardening your heart. You learn to choose relationships that feel mutual, balanced, and respectful. Because when someone truly thinks about you all day, they don't just say you're important, they live like you are. Let me start by grounding you in something important. Human behavior is never random. Every action is driven by focus, emotion, and priority. When a man thinks about you all day, it doesn't show up in grand speeches or dramatic promises. It shows up in consistent, repeatable behaviors. And once you understand these behaviors, you stop questioning your worth and start seeing reality clearly. First, pay attention to how he communicates with you. Not just how often, but how consciously. When someone is thinking about you throughout the day, their mind naturally finds reasons to reach out. You'll notice messages that have intention behind them. He doesn't just text to fill silence, he texts to connect. He shares thoughts, reactions, and moments because you are mentally present in his daily experience. From an educational perspective, this is how the brain works. Whatever occupies our thoughts repeatedly becomes emotionally significant. If he checks in without needing a reason, if he follows up on conversations, if he responds with awareness instead of convenience, it means you are part of his mental routine. That level of consistency is not forced, it's automatic. Second, observe how he remembers and acts on small details. Memory is a powerful indicator of emotional investment. The mind only stores what it considers important. When a man recalls things you mentioned casually, your goals, your worries, your preferences, it shows that he replays you in his thoughts. He isn't just hearing you, he's processing you. Education teaches us that repetition strengthens neural connections. So if your words stay with him, it means you are being mentally revisited. Even more powerful is when those memories turn into actions. He adjusts his behavior, avoids things that bother you, or supports things that matter to you. That shift signals that you influence his internal decision-making system. Third, look closely at how he invests his time and energy. Time is the most honest currency a human being has. People make time for what they value, not what they like temporarily. When a man thinks about you all day, you'll notice effort without pressure. He creates space for you even on busy days. He shows up emotionally, not just physically. He listens, supports, and protects the connection because losing it would create discomfort within him. From a psychological standpoint, this happens when emotional attachment forms your presence, regulates his emotional state. That's why he becomes more patient, more intentional, and more consistent. Here's the empowering truth. This knowledge is not meant to make you dependent on attention. It's meant to make you aware. Awareness gives you control. When actions align with these patterns, you don't need reassurance. And when they don't, you don't need excuses. You deserve clarity, consistency, and respect. When you recognize these signs, you stop chasing signals and start choosing from strength. That's how you elevate your standards in your life. When a man thinks about you all day, the first and strongest signal is the way his communication carries intention, not habit. This is not about constant texting or overwhelming attention. It is about presence. Intentional communication means he reaches out with purpose. He checks in because you crossed his mind, not because he is bored or lonely. Educational psychology shows us that the brain repeatedly returns to what it values most. So when his words reflect curiosity, care, and relevance to your life, it means his mind is actively engaged with you, even when you are not physically present. This kind of communication builds emotional certainty because it replaces confusion with clarity and guessing with understanding. Another powerful indicator is how he remembers and uses details about you. Memory is not random, it is emotional. We remember what we attach meaning to. When a man recalls small details you never thought were important, it shows that you occupy mental space throughout his day. He connects present moments with past conversations, and that is evidence of deep cognitive involvement. This behavior teaches an important life lesson. When someone values you, they don't just hear you, they process you. And when you recognize this pattern, you begin to understand that attention is not about grand gestures, but about consistent awareness. Time investment is another undeniable signal. Time is life, and where time goes, energy flows. A man who thinks about you all day finds ways to include you in his schedule, even when life is demanding. He doesn't disappear during busy periods. Instead, he maintains connection in realistic, meaningful ways. This teaches a critical principle of personal empowerment. Never measure interest by words alone. Measure it by effort. When someone values you, they don't wait for convenience. They create priority. Understanding this helps you stop accepting excuses and start expecting alignment. Finally, observe how his actions support your growth and emotional safety. A man who thinks about you all day wants to protect the connection, not control it. He encourages your progress, respects your boundaries, and adjusts his behavior because your emotional state matters to him. This is emotional maturity in action. It shows that his thoughts about you are not selfish, but inclusive. The deeper lesson here is transformative. Awareness gives you choice. When you understand these behaviors, you no longer chase attention or validation. You choose from confidence. You recognize that true interest feels steady, respectful, and empowering. And when you operate from that awareness, you raise your standards, strengthen your self-worth, and step into relationships from a position of strength, not uncertainty.